When we think about math, we often think about how we use it. And when our kids say, what about math? Why am I learning math? We point to the reason behind it and the logic behind it and as Charlotte called it, the truth behind mathematics. Let me read to you a little of what she said in Ourselves. Book 1, she says, never are the operations of reason more delightful and more perfect than in mathematics. It's easy for us to focus on that. Yes, it's absolute truth. It's going to stay that way. But if you look in Volume 6, A Philosophy of Education, she also talks about the beauty of mathematics. I don't usually point out things around me as that's the beauty of mathematics. In fact, I'm not sure I know how to do that. So let's talk to a couple of experts on that today. Welcome to the Simply Charlotte Mason podcast. I'm Sonya Schaefer. Joining me today are my friends and the authors of Practical Geometry series. We have Tabitha Wirges and Dr. Julie Ryle with us. I'm so glad you guys are joining us.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Thank you. We love the Practical Geometry series. It is helpful for so many people. What we want to talk about today is math around us. And we often think of it in terms of the practicality of it, the truth of it, that it will never change. You know, when I'm baking, I can count on the fact that a half cup of flour is the half cup of flour, or whatever it is. You can tell I don't bake a lot, right? What uses only a half cup of flour, but you get the idea, you know?
Or adding on your fingers. There's 5 here. These are 5. There's always 5.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Making sure I have them all.
Right.
Yes, right. So we often think of it just in those terms, but Charlotte also talked about the beauty of mathematics. And whenever I think of that, I think, well, you have to have a mind like you guys, you know, the PhD in math in order to think this is a beautiful thing. But you were telling me earlier that there's beauty that any of us can recognize in math around us. So let's talk about that a little bit. All right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to start off by saying the beauty in math around us is not just recognizing it, but knowing that it exists around us. We like to leave math, we like to put it in our math lessons, right? And just kind of leave it there. It's like we've got to add our numbers up over here, or learn our multiplication tables, or how to construct a triangle. And we have our little place for math in our days, only during our school days.
Or only when I see numerals.
Or only when I see numerals. Exactly, yes. In the case of baking, you're like, oh, right, it's here, but you kind of leave it there and don't do much more with it. But math exists all around us. Like what we study in our books during our math lessons is something that is always happening in the world around us. It's just a part of the world that God created. And so that's the beauty and the absolute truth that Charlotte's talking about when she says that it's beautiful. Like the absolute truth of it is beautiful, but also that it's just here. It's everywhere around us.
So we really just need to have eyes to see it. Kind of like nature study.
Exactly. And that's a great place to even begin to see math is in nature. Our Creator has woven this into all of his creation around us. And so it's so cool to be able to see. That's one thing that we love and that we've started doing ourselves, I know, is starting to put numbers in our nature journal. So we look for measurements, we look for patterns, we look for ways to include numbers and encourage our students. So many ways
that you can notice it in your nature journal. You can count the number of times that you heard a bird calling when you were listening on your back porch. You could see how much rainfall you got when you measured the amount of rainfall that just happened, and you record that in your nature journal. That was math that you were measuring there. If you wanted to see, take count of like how a plant was growing from your garden or something per se. That's
how many more weeds were in the garden today than yesterday.
That would be difficult to count.
Yeah, that's the truth. That might be
that might grow exponentially rather fast, but you know.
But keeping a frequency chart, say, of the bird calls you heard. If you know a few bird calls, you can say, well, I heard. Let me write down the birds that I'm hearing right now.
Red-bellied woodpecker.
I heard
one a lot today.
Yes.
Chickadees. And then start to just use tick marks to count them. And you've created a frequency chart in your nature journal. And one thing this does is it takes math out of that bubble of only during our 30-minute math lesson time. And let's take it out into our regular world. This is where it is. And I think it reduces the fear of math because a lot of us do have a math phobia. a lot of homeschool moms have told me over the years that they suffer from math phobia.
Which is not our own fault. It probably has
Not
a
at
lot to
all.
do with the way we were taught.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Not using Charlotte's methods.
And even having a teacher that came at it, even though she wasn't using Charlotte's method, so you wouldn't have seen as much of the beauty as you explored it, but also you might have had a teacher that said things like, this can be hard, or might have even said, let's do our math lesson, and they weren't really excited about
Picking
it
up
either.
the atmosphere
and you
that
picked up the
teacher
atmosphere.
created.
Yes.
That's a good point.
Have you ever said, "Oh, I'm just not a math person"?
Oh, yes. A lot of people have said that, yeah.
And we don't require ourselves or our students to be an artist before we let them practice art, appreciate looking at art, appreciate doing art, playing with those things. It's the same thing. We don't have to consider ourselves a mathematician to be able to enjoy math.
That is so true.
recognize
Charlotte
its
even wrote about that. She said something about, you don't have to be a musician to be able to appreciate and listen to the composers. And just like you don't have to be an actor to appreciate Shakespeare.
Absolutely. That's exactly
Yeah.
it. Yes.
Same
so when
thing.
we're noticing it, and we said that we like to add in some specifics when it comes to numbers to our math journals. So we make frequency charts and we graph what's happening and we write down the numbers. But in your nature journal, you might just put down that you heard the chickadee, but while you were sitting there listening, you might have noticed that you heard it so many times, or you heard it a lot this morning and not so much yesterday morning. And just realizing the difference of a lot and not so much was you picking up on the math that was happening around you. There were numbers that were happening there.
So even with this idea of adding it to the nature notebook, we still let each person choose their own
Absolutely. It's going to be how it
expression.
speaks to you.
Yes.
And I'll take it
yes.
even a step further.
Okay.
You were noticing differences in the number of birds you were hearing, but even just categorizing the bird calls that you're hearing is a math concept. Sorting and categorizing, that happens all around us every day.
Yeah.
And just taking a moment to realize, oh, that's math. It's not scary.
Right.
This is something that our math lesson is actually going to help us with, be able to do that in life.
Yeah. When you want to organize your pantry because it's just gone to complete awry.
Not that we speak from experience,
Right.
but yeah, if that might happen to someone. yeah.
Anytime you're taking something that's chaotic and you're just bringing order to it, that's math. It doesn't always have to have a numerical value to it. So the patterns that you might recognize when you are doing sewing techniques or quilting and admiring the quilting, then you're recognizing patterns, and that's math right there, is noticing those patterns. There's so much to math that's patterns, and you get to pick up more on the patterns in your lesson, like Julie said, but you can see the beauty of it everywhere else in handicrafts and your science journals.
Where are some other places that we can see math around us?
One is our history. So we have a lot of history charts. And at Charlotte Mason Education.
Yeah, we do, yeah.
And so we have a century chart, and then we might have a wall timeline, and then we have our book of centuries. We have all these different ways that we are often using our base 10 number system to organize our history.
That's true.
And so we have this 10 by 10 grid, and we can see what things are happening, and then we expand it out to centuries and into millennia, and we can see all these things happening. And that's just a great way for us to think about the base 10 number system and how you can look at a decade and a century and a millennium. It's just really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Putting it in order like that. Even just looking at time, when you talk about history, you're looking at what the Babylonians did with the number 60, and they had a base 60 number system, and we still use that today. And so you get to see that when you're just looking at time and scheduling your days, and you recognize the math that's happening there.
So do you point this out to your child and say, look, here's the beauty of math?
No. No, I wouldn't. That takes away from the beauty of math. If you're sitting there and you notice this in your history chart and you're doing your book of centuries and you're like, wow, this happened at the same time that Columbus was exploring America, that's amazing. And then if I'm going to sit there and go, oh yeah, and now we're going to count that and see exactly how many it is. And do you know, that's just like the math that we were doing in our lesson 30 minutes ago. Like
Oh, that just sucked all of the joy of discovery out.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you'll find that your students can just have, some of your students might have a natural love for exploring that kind of stuff on their own.
True.
So here's a story. I had my kids out this past year. We had an emergence of 2 different broods of cicadas. So we had the 13-year cicadas and the 17-year cicadas. And you can find articles and read about how those prime numbers, this is just another testament to our creator, how he created these particular insects to come out this prime number of years so that they don't end up coming out at the same time very often, so that they're not interbreeding. Okay?
Okay.
So then I started talking to my kids. Were noticing so many cicadas, so it led to a conversation
Just
about
this past year when this was happening.
Yeah, it was this year.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we were talking about the dual brood, which is unusual for this year, and how there are 13-year cicadas and 17 years, and they just naturally wondered, I wonder when the last time both broods emerged was. So then we just started playfully counting back by 13s, trying to find something that would work. And we ended up realizing that it was 1803 the last time this happened.
Wow.
And that was what we were studying in our time period, our history period at the time. And so they were like, oh, the last time this happened, so-and-so was alive, or
Yeah.
this was
Yeah.
going
Make
on.
those connections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't stop them and say, you know what, this is our mental math for today.
Yeah, exactly.
But they
and
just
isn't it beautiful? You know?
They just had fun with playing with
Well,
it.
but there's also the fact that you're a math person, and so your kids that spills over into your home a lot, and so your kids would want to explore that, right? And so I want to point out for moms that maybe this is not something that you normally do. But if they start to just recognize when they're talking to their kids about the 13-year and 17-year cicadas, and they realize that this doesn't happen very often, you just recognizing for themselves that they are finding the appreciation in numbers right then, that is math. And they can just know it for themselves. They don't have to say, well, they don't have to know that they should count that back. Or their kids may not want to count that back. And that's okay. That's not required to
Right.
enjoy the beauty of that moment of recognizing the prime numbers that were there, the fact that this doesn't happen very often, and the underlying beauty of math that was there that the mom can just recognize. And as she continues to recognize this over and over throughout her day and days in life and continues on, it'll start to show and she'll bubble out from that and it'll carry on to the rest of her kids, kind of like mother culture and how we take in and feed ourselves into all the joys of what we're trying to teach to our kids, and that comes out and so that they enjoy it as well.
Yeah, and I love how you are explaining that, because the more that the mom can recognize those things, and that's just kind of a little gift for herself. That's also, I think, one more, I'm trying to think of the word picture to use. It's not a brick that we're building towers or anything like that, but it's one more piece that will help her. Okay, here we go. It's one more rung on the ladder to help her climb out of the math phobia pit.
There we go.
I love that.
I like that one. That was good.
So what are some other ways that you have seen beauty in
I want
in
to
the
point
math
out
around you?
in picture study. So you might not
really?
notice picture study at math in your picture studies and when
Yeah.
you're exploring art, but there's so much math when it comes to art. Whenever you're looking at a picture and you notice the rule of thirds, that is the golden ratio. That's Fibonacci sequence. That there's so much math to that, just period. And that is all through nature. And you'll notice the Fibonacci sequence once you dive into that. But just recognizing when you say rule of thirds in your pictures and that they followed the rule of thirds or didn't follow the rule of thirds. I like this or don't like this. This is pleasing to my eye because it follows the rule of thirds. You just found math beautiful. Or the colors that mix together and you noticed the color scheme and that they go together well, and that's pleasing to your eye. That color scheme and having that mix together well, that's math right there. The way that those interlock. When we talk about primary and secondary numbers, that's math. We could get into like the scale of the pictures. That seems a little bit more obvious, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's math. How much, if you're replicating for your picture study and you're wanting to paint it yourself or try it out and you're trying to mix your colors in order to get the right color that you're seeing in front of you, your color mixing that you're doing, you've got a ratio of your paints that you're doing.
Yes.
And that's math. Like you're doing it. You're not thinking about the numbers you're doing for it. But you are doing numbers. You have numbers that are going on there. There is a ratio happening.
Yes.
Even if you don't know what the ratio is. It's there.
Yeah, and whatever it is that mom or student may already be into. So if it's music, then you can think about the intervals between the notes. And there's so much math in music, and you'll have to forgive me. I'm not a musician.
There is.
I have not had music lessons, but I know that it exists, that it's there.
A lot of it.
And you can study that. But
That one gets really fun because you can look at the sound graphs for it sometimes, so for particular notes.
The frequency.
And the frequency charts. That one, and you can actually see the graphs for that, and that's very mathematical. So if you get a chance to do that, that's just beautiful. But even just listening to the notes, so if a frequency is off, it's not going to sound pleasing to your ear. But when it's in tune, and it comes in tune with another instrument or another note, then or maybe you're singing and you start harmonizing together because those frequencies are locking in together. That's what made it sound beautiful. And so now you just said that math sounded beautiful.
Yeah, and even a circle of fifths that you have in different keys.
Yes.
I never thought of that before, but that's math.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or when you're reading music, right? So it can be an 4/4, and so you have your quarter notes and your whole notes and your half notes, and there's fractions right there.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you
And then you can take it to upper level, and the distances between the frets on a guitar on a string instrument. Oh my gosh. This is logarithmic. And so we're getting into that into Algebra 2 trig, and we can use that as an example. But, it's something that a musician would have already noticed about their instrument, that I have this irregular spacing between my frets. But there is a very mathematical reason for that.
There's a reason that it goes that. Your piano,
in my grand piano, the wires are different thicknesses, different lengths. Sometimes there's more than one to a hammer. I never thought of that as being math.
the ratio, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the ratios for your piano note keys was actually created by Pythagoras. Like
Wasn't he
or
smart?
he's known for doing that anyways. I don't know. He's known for doing quite a few things. But
Yeah, wow.
I think it might have been one of his followers.
Reading about the history of math, that may sound like a very dry subject to read as mother culture, but there are some great books out there that make it very living and very entertaining. So to read some books on the history of math is a great way for mom to get that mother culture into her, and you'll start noticing more things after you
Okay, you'll have to give me some of those titles,
yes,
and we'll have
yes.
to leave links to those for everybody.
Absolutely,
'cause,
sure.
Yeah, living math history books. That's
It sounds like an
Just seeing-
oxymoron.
yeah.
no, but I mean, well, you gave me that great book on the history of cancer, and I never thought that could be living, but it was so living, and so so now I'm a believer. There's going to be living
The math
books on
ones
any
are
of that.
really fun because they will have beautiful pictures in there. Like they'll have the sunflower in there, and you'll have this swirl drawn that you'll naturally see in the sunflower, but they'll draw it there, and then they'll show you like why that's Fibonacci and the golden ratio right there in a sunflower. Like,
So much beauty around us.
It's
Any others that you want to give for examples or anything?
I did want to mention, and of course, science. You can notice the math that's happening in science. But leading into that, math is the language of the sciences. And when you're studying science, it's an exploratory, you're trying it out, you're seeing what's happening. And so I want to give that feeling into the math subject as well, because it's the language of the sciences. You're using math to explore your science that you're studying right then. So that's one way to consider the beauty of math that's happening. Also, realizing if math is the language of the sciences and science is how everything around us works, then there's an underlying science works this. And this is how the plant grows. This is how photosynthesis happens down to the electrons and the molecules. And the underlying base underneath that is your math. And so you needed the math in order to recognize the science that's already happening. So math is already happening all around you. It's part of this world. It's how God works.
The last thing we want to do is put more of a burden on mom to be looking for these things and to be searching them out. And that's not what we're saying at all. We're just saying to recognize what's already there. It's there all around us all the time. And if you could just open your eyes to that and see it, I do think that it will reduce the fear of math, because you'll see it's here and it's okay to play with it and just enjoy it.
Yes, that's wonderful, wonderful. So often we think, well, I need to learn this so I can pass it on to my kids, and we feel pressure instead of just, I want to explore that for myself, so I can continue to grow as a person and as a parent as well. Yeah,
Right, and that's where it comes. If you going to bring math into your mother culture, it doesn't have to be that you get better at trig.
good point.
It can just be that you recognize that the flower petals that you thought were pretty had 3 petals, and that you realized that was math that you just thought that was pretty. So it can be that simple to bring
That's wonderful, wonderful.
math mother culture.
Yes, that's what it is. That's what it is. Thanks so much for helping us, for opening our eyes, encouraging us to open our eyes to the beauty of math around us, not just the truth, which is all around us, but the beauty of it as well. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.